Jamie, welcome to the House of Visionaries podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, great stuff. So, for those of you that don't know Jamie, just a quick overview and a quick intro. His route into TA is anything but traditional, I would say. He's co-founded and exited a SaaS business called Kyako before joining Deliveroo as product lead, later moving into TA and applying product thinking into those people functions, and has gone on to help Deliveroo from 1,000 people to 4,500 people, and now leads talent and organizational development globally, which is exactly why I'm super excited to officially welcome Jamie to be our next UK Board of Visionary member. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So today's all about getting to know the board and getting to know specifically you, Jamie, a little bit better. So let's start at the beginning. We always ask the same question for all our Board of Visionaries, and that is, what does visionary actually mean to you?
Gosh, that's a big question. What does visionary mean? I wish I came prepared with a really profound, succinct sounding answer. Visionary for me, I guess, if I reflect on the visionaries I get excited about and I follow and I listen to and aspire to be like, it's folks who have an insatiable curiosity about their space, their work, their domain, whatever it might be. They are constantly experimenting, constantly horizon scanning, and as a result are able to connect some interesting dots before most other people get to connect those dots, and they're able to communicate those in a really great way. So that's what visionary means to me. I'm not sure my ego is so big I would put myself in that bucket or describe myself that way, but it's certainly a set of things that I am aspiring to.
Yeah, I love that. And I definitely agree. It's about connecting those dots. And often I think sometimes it gets confused with like prediction. You're going to predict the future, but I see it almost as somebody committing to that direction, maybe sometimes before the data is obvious or it really makes sense. And it's having that like bravery to go and, like you said, connect the dots and get after it. So yeah, really, really interesting take on it. So let's rewind a little bit, Jamie. Let's get to know you. So where did your career start, and who was your biggest influence on your career growing up?
Hopefully we'll keep people tuned in for more than 2 minutes, and I'll try lend the short story. So my background is, I guess today you describe my background and sort of portfolio of experience as a technologist, first and foremost. Back when I started, it was computer geek. From a very young age, was really fortunate to have a computer in the house, Windows 95 and earlier. And my dad, who was really into computers and very excited about exposing his 10, 11, 12-year-old son to them. And I loved playing games on the computer, but I also loved tinkering around and building things. I taught myself to build websites. This became a little bit of a side gig when I was sort of 14, 15 years old. I built websites for small local businesses and sort of helped them get online and taught them how it works and how to reach their customers. And then from there, I built a passion for building things that other people would use and interact with. Also augmented by the usual set of first-time jobs. Worked in a garden centre, a car wash, paperboy, so on. But the website work and that kind of concept of self-employment, the excitement of someone trusting you to deliver something and paying you for that and having those skills recognized, the excitement of publishing something and then other people using it successfully. I really got a kick out of that, and that stuck with me. I went to university, did computer science, which was great, met a bunch of like-minded people, worked on other kind of online projects. And through one of those projects, I got connected with my future co-founder, best friend, lifelong friend, a guy called Varun. And initially started collaborating with him on his idea, which was to build a customer service software platform for businesses to use, one that wouldn't suck for the customer. So his great insight was he was also a web developer. He had customers, and all the software that was available out there to support his customers, he would have been embarrassed to ask his customers to use. No customer centricity whatsoever. So that was his insight. And I started freelancing a bit and doing some work with him. And then he said, hey, do I want to drop out of university and continue on this thing full time with him? And I said, very grateful for the offer. Don't want to drop out of university, but I will try and do both, which I did. Definitely at the expense of my grades. But it was one of the best choices of my life. We built that company globally, grew it to about 250 people over 10 years, exited in 2018 to private equity, which is a positive outcome. And it was such an accelerant for my growth professionally, personally. There is nothing better than being thrown in at the deep end at the age of 21, 22, and having to figure out a bunch of things that no one has ever taught you, to convince other people much smarter than you and better at you to join you to kind of figure out these things. And then throughout that 10 years, I worked on a bunch of things. In the early days, I was writing blog posts, doing pull requests, answering customer support tickets, contributing to product roadmap. Then as we sort of scaled and matured, my focus became much more on go-to-market, marketing strategy, and product. And I also always looked after people, which was always a sort of passion area of mine. And I'd say followed by technology, people and psychology, what makes people tick, how to really understand them and then build things for them. A huge passion of mine and something I love geeking out about. So continue to look after people, and our people experience team at Kyako was something that I never let go of right until the end. So that was 2018, and then we exited. Most of us left. The direction of the company in a bigger private equity portfolio wasn't what most of us signed up for. Then had a few months off, a bit of an existential crisis about what on earth do I do next. I was worried I was fundamentally unemployable because I'd done a bit of everything in one particular space and sector. So I said, I'm going to have to specialize in something. And I thought, why not product? Got introduced to the chief product officer here at Deliveroo, a fabulous leader called Akshay, and he hired me into a product lead role. I'm not sure he knew what he was hiring me for, because I turned up on day one and he said, go find the most broken things to fix, which funnily enough ended up mostly being internal product and org stuff. So most of my time was spent on what we would now call product operations. We didn't have a label for it back then. But how do we, answering some questions like, what does it mean to be a product manager at Deliveroo? And what differentiates our expectations between a product manager versus a senior versus group level? The company was growing incredibly fast in size, headcount, and business scale, creating lots of new product groups to own a increasingly large surface area of product. How do we better coordinate those, link them to the business, size up opportunities in a consistent way, use the same kind of language and measurement frameworks? So I was working on those kinds of things. And then I also worked on, the company had ambitions to triple the size of its tech org within the space of 18 months, but no one was talking to the people team. So I stepped into a role there. And to really cut a long story short, I partnered with the people team on a talent and talent acquisition strategy focused on tech, and then was offered what was going to be a bit of a secondment for 12 months to join the team to help build the thing. And that was 6.5 years ago. So, and I'm not sure my secondment has officially ended on Workday. I should check that.
Yeah.
And then over that time at Deliveroo, built and led TA, that's been my mainstay. Also stood up a bunch of things that didn't exist in the people team. So L&D, some people systems, some elements of reward, DEI. I would stand it up, hire someone better than me to go and scale the thing. And then last year moved into a new remit, looking after talent management, L&D, culture, performance values, org design, all of the sort of what and how of where do we need to be as a company and sort of how we can get there in terms of capabilities. And here we are today.
Yeah, incredible. What a cool journey. Incredible. So it sounds like first of all, credit to you for going launching your own business at such a young age. I think that that takes a lot of guts, and obviously to back yourself and to go and do that's really cool.
Or naivety.
Well, I think
Blind naivety, and
yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of doing it young. Certainly, that's what myself and Ben found. It's almost you're too naive to think about it, so you just crack on.
100%. It's like why they say the best age for a kid to pick up skiing is when they're 3, because they have no concept of fear, no self-awareness of capability.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so credit to you for that. I mean, from what you've said, it sounds like even in those early stages of co-founding Kyako, that was when you got that first, I guess, exposure to people management, hiring, building teams, leading teams at a very young age. What do you think, if you were to look back, what were like the core elements of founding your own business and scaling your own business that taught you about building teams? And maybe most TA leaders that have done, I don't know, agency into TA may not have had exposure to. What are the core principles that you've got from that experience?
We made more than our fair share of mistakes. So looking back, one of the things I'm most thankful is the opportunity to have made those mistakes and learn from them, get a bit better, or hopefully get a bit better every sort of day. But it definitely compressed our kind of learning journey, figuring out how we build and scale a company. Every sort of headcount breakpoint, so 20 to 50 to 100, 150 to 200, it needed a complete rethink of the whole talent and org strategy. So the mechanisms we had to sort of stay in touch, keep people organized and aligned, how we're hiring, who we're hiring, what kind of weighting we would apply to sort of experience and potential. And being able to spot those breakpoints, course correct, realize what we were doing before is not going to work for us going forward, and do that multiple times. It was super valuable. I think a couple of I think 3 key lessons stand out. The first one was, I mentioned at the start, we made a bunch of mistakes. Moving quickly to recognize those and acting on them, especially while teams are small and nascent and in the forming stage, was very important. Not without accountability. If we made a hiring mistake, that was on us, totally on us. And as little as possible, the individual involved shouldn't bear the brunt of that accountability for getting that wrong. But when you identify a mistake, really acting quickly and making a hard call, number one. Number two, in our early days, we made a pretty classic naive mistake of optimizing for people's experience profile above their raw potential. The usual trap of, oh, well, if this person has done this exact job at a company we aspire to be, obviously this is going to be the right hiring decision. Especially if you kind of, with a halo effect, overlook some things that, within hindsight, were red flags for someone's ability to translate that experience into your new environment. Made that mistake more times than I'd like to admit. But the lesson there is, and I've continued to learn this lesson at Deliveroo as we, at a 1,000-person company, now just over 4,000, is that almost always optimizing for the things that are going to predict values alignment, culture fit, compatibility, transferability, whatever you want to call it. And number 2, people's raw potential and adaptability, especially in early stage, high growth spaces where there's going to be a lot of ambiguity and change and iteration, is almost always the right call. I'd say that's lesson number 2. And that one has read across from when we were under 50 people at Kyako to 250 to 1,000 at Deliveroo, and is still true today. And I think a third one would be a third lesson, and we had to do the hard yards to do this. It's having the bravery, but also humility to convince really great people to join you on this thing. I mentioned earlier, there's nothing like being in your sort of early 20s and you could be full of imposter syndrome, but you have to show up. There's a bit of faking it until you make it. There is a skill that needs to be developed, which is the ability to whittle down and articulate what is the most compelling reason for why this place is going to give someone the best platform and environments to achieve what they want to do in their career and life above all others. especially more mature, established places with a lot more stability. I think that would be sort of number 3, hard-earned, super valuable skill that's been valuable today.
Yeah, I love that. And what an incredible experience to go and take into a scaling business, though, having like run it yourself, built it, and experienced those sort of growth challenges and those hurdles at each stage. And I think on that third point, that's the visionary piece. That's the piece that gets people engaged, that they feel they want to get on the bus and they want to join the journey. And I think articulating that, but also seeing it through, it's great having a great idea, but it's the proof that, okay, we are on this journey, we're going to go and create something amazing. So yeah, some really obviously amazing lessons that you've picked up in doing that, and then taking it to Deliveroo. So how did you find the transition from co-founder to then employee and going on a scale up journey, obviously in a very different environment and a different role? Like, how did you find that transition?
Horrendous. That's sort of horrendous, but I will say, and I think this is still true today, Deliveroo is, it especially was then, full of entrepreneurs and former founders. So my first boss, the chief product officer, he was a founder of a startup that Deliveroo acquired. And then the chief people officer, who I then go on to work for sort of less than a year after joining Deliveroo, he was that person's co-founder of that startup. So I've had the benefit of being able to be managed by people who got me, so to speak, but also are probably aware of the blind spots I was going to be showing up on day one with, not having grown up, so to speak, professionally in a typical corporate environment. Kyako was a proper business, but something I learned in hindsight is operating as a founder or co-founder in a business is very different to operating as anyone else. And there are a bunch of things you take for granted that you might not have had to, that we had to index on less compared to other people or managers or leaders, particularly ones who have sort of stepped into a business or inheriting other teams. And things, frankly, we just got away with. We could rely on a lot more osmosis to communicate and convey culture. The culture was a mirror of us, sort of the good and the bad, and could rely on fewer sort of formal mechanisms. Upwards management looked very different. There was very little. I turned up on day one at Deliveroo and asked myself, what is upwards management?
Yeah.
In our onboarding, it was kind of like tip number 5, get really good at this in a fast-moving environment. But I'm really glad I made the jump from our small, early stage, smaller scale startup to something a lot bigger. And one of the things I really wanted to get out of my next step and in joining Deliveroo was to learn and experience what bigger and a bit more formal and formalized looks like, something that would just be so different in all respects compared to what I experienced before.
Yeah.
So Deliveroo is mostly B2C, Kyako was B2B, big hyper growth, venture backed. Kyako wasn't. We were mostly bootstrapped, and we're growing and profitable, but certainly not hyper growth. And I wanted as much difference as possible, so I could have a mirror held up to me to show me everything I had been taking for granted before, and where the gaps are that I need to fill in, and what's missing in my toolkit if I wanted to build a career as a successful scaled leader of something.
Yeah, amazing. And obviously enjoying it. Like you said, 6 years, the business has gone from strength to strength, and you've done a number of different roles now in the business. But what is it that you've transitioned obviously from product into TA? What is it that you enjoy about TA that has made that stick? What are the key things that you just love about it that has allowed you to stay engaged and motivated in that environment?
The list is long. You said at the start I had a very unusual path into recruitment, but actually every recruiter I've ever met has said they have fallen into recruitment.
Yeah.
And I probably had the biggest trip and stumble and falling into recruitment of anyone. So what I loved about TA, going back to Kyako, I loved recruiting. It was exciting as securing and winning deals. Just that thrill of identifying someone who's going to be so excited to have on board and win and land, and getting that person over the land, and then seeing them be successful, and then sort of keeping them. Like such a big thrill. I loved it. And I got addicted and would really annoy anyone else working on recruiting at Kyako, because I'd just be sort of so hands-on with it. And so I've always loved recruiting. I've also always loved, how do you take a thing that is subscale and build machinery around it to scale? And then most of my experience doing that at Kyako centered around sort of customer acquisition and retention. So then, given the opportunity to do recruiting and build TA machinery at scale, it was sort of a no-brainer for me. Ticked lots of boxes. I think within the people space, TA tends to be at the forefront of technology and people technology, number one. That was very exciting. Number two, how do you build all of the process and operations and supporting infrastructure, essentially go-to-market machinery, to do something that I think in many respects is harder and more complicated than customer acquisition, and do it well. Super exciting problem space. And then number three, sort of the thrill and buzz of, it's like one of the most tangible ways you can see yourself contributing to building a company, making that next best hire, seeing those people join, build their own teams, follow your processes and best practices to do that really well and get an edge in the market. Those really fast feedback loops, I think those are things that have really kept me excited about TA. And then being able to do that at a place like at Deliveroo, where culturally we just have so much going for us in TA, really strong buy-in. It is a priority for everyone to be contributing to recruiting well in some shape or form. Leadership alignment that it is existential for us to get this right. And then also having a very experimental, technology-led culture, just a fantastic place to be sort of building and scaling TA in. And then with the company going from series DE, about 1,000 people, to 4,500 and some ups and downs in between, every 6 to 12 months, what TA needed to look like, completely different. So again, constantly having to reinvent and re-engineer. An edge we had in the market that was working well in 1 year, we might lose and have to find what the next thing is going to be. So full of exciting invention, problem solving, and iteration.
Yeah, amazing. I couldn't agree more, by the way. There's something about getting that great person into your business, going on the journey with them and seeing them flourish and then go and make an impact. Like, I still get the same buzz.
Yeah. It sounds really cheesy.
It does, yeah.
And I think every recruiter says the same thing in every single interview. But yeah. It's true. I think it has to be true.
Yeah.
Especially as if recruiting is your full-time job, if that isn't where you're getting your kick or thrill, that can be a really hot job.
Yeah. And you can sense the passion that you've got for that. And obviously you've done it in your own business now at Deliveroo, and still have that appetite to go and do that, which is really cool. Okay, we've got a couple of quick fire questions. So we asked the community, Jamie, what would you like to know about the board? So we've got a couple of fun quick fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So the first one is, what's the biggest challenge that you see in TA in 2026?
I'm going to be amazed if everyone didn't have the same answer, but it definitely centers on AI. I think it's AI and the disruption that is going to bring, or maybe even upending, to our usual channels and go-to-market motions in TA. I think it is over the next, not just in 2026, but next 3 years, I think it is all up in the air as to how that lands. Our network's going to be so flooded by automation and outreach, some of it good, some of it just spam, that candidates just switch off usual channels. So they're all going to run into kind of walled gardens. So we're going to become even more dependent on networks like LinkedIn. Are they going to put their prices up? Will it become pay to play, pay to reach? We're seeing the emergence of talent marketplaces. Again, walled gardens, pay to play from employers. What does that mean for the future of a sort of TA team? I think that is not a present challenge that's having a big impact on us, although we are starting to see some early signals that is starting to impact our usual assumptions around productivity and funnel efficiency. But I think it's going to be a huge challenge challenge, potentially existential for most TA teams' recruiting strategies in a couple of years' time. I think 2026 is where we're going to really see that sort of the curve inflect on everything AI can sort of supercharge in that respect.
Yeah, like you said, it's probably a common answer and on the front of everyone's mind. But it's one of the biggest transformations that we'll see in our career. Probably it's a huge challenge, but also an amazing opportunity, I think. And if you can get that strategy right, I think a lot of businesses will land in a great space. But it's getting that balance, and I think it's a bit of an unknown because it's not a proven playbook. It's not like we can go and copy somebody. We're figuring it out as we go.
Exactly.
Okay, the next one, Jamie. So, what's one TA trend that's completely overhyped?
Overhyped. Might be a bit controversial, this one. I think that the TA industry today, on average, not everyone, I realize I'm painting a big space with a broad brush. I think we over-index on the personal touch for candidates. And I think there's a received wisdom that's held a bit too strongly in some spaces that more human interaction and person-to-person interaction is a good thing, and it's what candidates want and is going to lead to success. And we either need more of it, or we should sort of protect all of that from AI and increasing sort of automation potential. I think the right answer depends on the type of recruiting you're doing, the volume, the space, the markets, kind of what talent pools you're trying to reach and attract. Having spent a lot of time in the customer experience space, where we got really deep into the psychology of a customer and what genuinely attracts customers and retains them and delights them, it's all about reducing effort for that customer, reducing stress. What is the leanest, lowest effort path to the customer getting what they want above all else? So, 15 years ago, maybe a bit longer, received wisdom for companies would be, in order to delight customers, you need to surprise them with free vouchers every so often, or they call up on the phone and you give them free shipping. All the data show none of that actually increased any kind of stickiness or aggregate customer delight or happiness. What really drove it was the likes of Amazon, who allowed you to do customer service by pushing some buttons and getting automated resolutions. Same with banks. The banks that led and won are the ones that were at the forefront of self-service and digitization and really great digital products so customers can get things done. And I think the same goes for our candidates and the candidate experience and recruiting. I think the more autonomy and control we can put in the hands of candidates to do things more on their terms, even if it is just pushing buttons to progress themselves on a sort of job search opportunity or through a process, I think that is a net positive for candidates. I think it's what candidates really want. They don't want to be on the phone to another person all the time. There's nothing more emotionally stressful than having to talk to another person and build a relationship. I think the recruiting teams of the future, especially AI enabled, that have the ability to build more digital candidate experiences and put more of the control of their journey in the candidate's hands, are going to be the winners. Of course, I'm not saying candidates are going to join a company or accept a job without interacting with anyone they're going to get to work with or to be able to do their own assessments. Of course, there has to be that at the heart of the candidate journey. But I think everything else, the more we can make that self-serve and efficient and put it in the hands of the customer, the candidate, I think that's going to give TA teams an edge.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think, like you say, it's quite controversial. There'll be people that will be really over-indexing on that human connection. I think a lot depends, like you said, the level of role. Is it high touch,
Totally.
high level role, low touch, low skilled role, etc. But interesting what you say around that streamlining the process. When you talk through that, it made me think of when I read about Uber and their the biggest innovation wasn't the car, it wasn't the service, it was mapping where the car is on the journey and how far is it to you. And similar to like the Deliveroo app, I guess that streamlines the service. It takes away that ambiguity and that anxiety of where is the car, where like on that journey. And I think with AI and digital products and the way we can do it, I think there is a massive opportunity there to streamline the candidate experience and to improve it. And that's got nothing to do with human connection.
Yeah, 100%. I'm following. There's a bunch of them, but a couple of interesting companies kind of exploring this space, and I think touching on exactly this thing. So, the likes of Jack and Jill, or Dex, which is sort of a talent marketplace, and one of their part of the value prop for a candidate is the last recruiter screen you will ever have to do. You screen, you get a great profile, you join these marketplaces. I think they're tapping into this, which is candidates at the end of the day, they are optimizing for the leanest, quickest path to getting what they want. And I think that just has to be a core tenet for how we build candidate experiences. And I think lots of TA teams have been restrained by either the technology they've been given or been lumped with. I think with AI and the ability for many more people to become builders, especially in the digital space, I think that's no longer true, and is hopefully going to empower TA teams to build the right kind of digital experiences and all of the technology infrastructure that sort of supports that for their candidates.
Yeah, super interesting, and it'll be a busy and an interesting couple of years, I think, ahead of us, trying to figure out what the landscape looks like. Lots of different paths to take. So the final question from the community, Jamie, it's a big one. What career would you choose if TA didn't exist?
Do you want my kind of childish pipe dream answer, or my kind of my childish pipe dream answer? It would be running a small boutique wine bar that also does some food, but really small menu. A great by the glass wine selection, and as well as being the proprietor of the place, I'm running it and also benefiting from everything it has to offer every evening.
Amazing. Very cool. Very different to TA. Where's that passion come from then, Jamie?
I think it's a few things. I think like lots of people, I presume, who have office jobs and do knowledge work, wanting to do something kind of real.
Yeah.
So like second down from the wine bar, it would be, I'd love to be an electrician. But also I just love food. That isn't something that I've just kind of learnt by working at Deliveroo, although they might as well pay my salary in Deliveroo credits for the amount I'm using it. I've just always loved food. And I do like the odd glass of wine as well.
Yeah. Love it. I'll watch this space maybe in the future, Jamie.
Early retirement project.
Yeah. Okay, so jumping back into Deliveroo then, you've made the leap from product into TA. Touching on more of that product management experience, what principles have you been able to take from product management and then into the people in the TA function?
That's a really good question. When I joined the TA team at Deliveroo, I definitely did not have a list of things that I could come and teach TA people, or a playbook for how we're going to do things completely differently. In hindsight, I can look back and other people shared with me, oh, the way you did these things, or way you went about these things, or the direction you pointed us in versus where we were going. I can see how that was different, came from a different place. So only with the benefit of hindsight can I look back and say, okay, I can connect the dots between the stuff I learned through sort of product and building things for customer acquisition and go-to-market motions and how that's translated to TA. The number one thing I think is customer centricity. I cannot accuse any TA team of not being candidate obsessed. But I think, in my experience, lots of TA teams do not have the opportunity to really take that to heart and genuinely prioritize it above everything else. Or in other words, it becomes a little bit superficial as opposed to deeply rooted into every single thing you're doing. And so I'd always emphasize for our team, we're always going to prioritize the candidate experience. And we've been lucky we've had the permission to do that at Deliveroo, because that has come with trade-offs around speed and sort of sometimes cost. We've been able to invest in it to make it true. But I don't just mean in kind of how rich or engaging or kind of slick our experience is, and the technology we've been able to put behind our team to support that. But I also mean when we say customer obsessed candidate centricity, is understanding the candidates better than anyone else. What drives them, a genuine understanding of psychology, so that we are going to have an edge in every single conversation and touch point for our candidates above our talent competitors who were, on the likes of Google and Meta and Amazon. They are going to out resource us 10, 100 times fold day in, day out. So we always had to find an edge, and the way we do that is by understanding our candidates better than anyone else. And then secondly, how do we then frame that understanding into, okay, what kind of problems are we actually going to go after, and what is going to have the most impact? And here we do operate with some sort of traditionally sort of product management principles in terms of how we stack rank opportunities and how we understand what is actually going to pay off and give us that edge and then translate into results, compared to, taking a bit of a scattergun approach or kind of just copying what looks like best in class in the market. And then related to that, third thing, I'll stop there. It is, I was always very reluctant and hesitant when the team would suggest ideas that we should implement and do because other companies are doing the same thing. There's a sort of old kind of product tenet or adage called cargo culting, which goes back to this story of, and I'm going to embarrass myself in my knowledge of history here, but some sort of conflict, and one of the superpowers, I think it was the Americans, used a remote island as a base for air cargo and whatever you do in conflict. And there was a tribe on that island, and they would see these planes come in and this runway be built. And whenever these planes would come in, some of the soldiers would give out free stuff and food and utilities, that kind of stuff. But then when the conflict ended and all went away, this tribe had no idea why all their free stuff and food had stopped. So they reconstructed the runway and what looked like a bit of a sort of control tower and radio tower. And then they waited for the cargo planes to come, but they never did. So that's cargo culting. And then the analogy at work is you see Google or some other company that you just love and you aspire to be doing a thing. So you copy a bit of it in your company and then you implement it and you're like, hey, job done. We're going to be as good as Google. Almost is never the case, because very few things read across. And when you see something like Google Ships or how they operate, that's like the tip of the iceberg. You have none of the other context and things that have to be true for that one little bit you copy to be successful. And in my experience, I think TA teams can be guilty of that. They copy processes that are either too heavyweight, incompatible with their culture, incompatible with their talent markets, because companies and teams that seem to be best in class do those. And that is something I think I definitely annoyed my team with, which was the business case cannot be, well, if Google and Facebook are doing it and it's working for them, then it should work for us because we want the same bar. I'd always push the team to go way back and start from first principles. What's the problem we're solving for our candidates? How are we going to translate that into what Deliveroo actually needs? And then how are we going to know whether that is the right thing to invest in? First principles thinking.
Yeah, love those principles. And like you say, very authentic and real to your business. And I think a lot of people can talk about it, but to go and get the investment and the backing and actually implement it is the challenging part. But it sounds like you guys are living and breathing that, which is great to see. So the final question, I want to tap into your fixer mindset. You're it's clear you're a fixer, you're a builder, taking problems and then designing solutions. So you may have touched on a couple of these points already, but if you had a blank canvas, Jamie, if you could redesign the TA function from scratch, what's the first thing that you would throw out? And what's one that you would protect at all costs?
I'll start with protect at all costs. And for me, that has to be lots of different words for it, but recruitment operations, TA operations, technology, analytics, programs and enablement, over-investing compared to the market in that space for Deliveroo has been game-changing. And had we not done that, there is no way we would today have a TA function that is as high-performing as it is. And a TA function and team that the best recruiters and coordinators and sources want to work in and be a part of. Nor would we have the edge in the market that allows us to punch above our weight, given our kind of company size, and sort of spending ability when it comes to the sort of commodity parts of the employee value proposition. That is something I encourage early stage TA teams to think about and prioritize. If you don't have the resources or skill to build a team that's focused on this, fine, but make sure you are prioritizing the skill sets in your first sort of senior recruiter or kind of recruitment lead into a team that will be able to bring a really strong systems acumen and analytical acumen to the team. And then certainly if you're scaling, before scale challenges in TA become a problem, start investing in TA ops. That team needs to be focused on where do we need to be in 12 to 18 months and start building for that now. And then another bit of advice I consistently give is if you've got sufficient scale for a TA ops team separate from your sort of delivery teams, keep them separate. There is a healthy tension to be sort of created in that dynamic. The TA ops team definitionally is focused more longer term and will be prioritizing more longer term things than your delivery team would be, both for very right reasons. And I've seen models where, and we had experimented with this early on in Deliveroo, where you combine them in some shape or form, whether it's fully embedded within a like classically structured delivery team or something else. One of those shorter range or longer range priorities will override the other for sure when it comes to budgeting and spending and firepower and sort of resource alignment. So if you've got sufficient scale for separation of roles and responsibilities, keep them separate, strongly advocate for that. Secondly, overinvest earlier than you think in analytics, systems, capabilities, even if it's just one person or part of someone's role, or if you're bigger in a dedicated team. And the first thing I would chuck out, I don't think I would chuck anything out. If I reflect on our Deliveroo TA team setup, that's now led by a fabulous recruiting leader called Selena. She has done a tremendous job ruthlessly prioritizing getting to the right structure and skills and role alignments that Deliveroo needs now and for where it needs to be in the future. I think if I look across kind of average market, could argue that there is an over-indexing of throwing recruiting headcount at problems. I think are fundamentally operational automation challenges. But I feel like that's a bit of a cheat answer because I think that is a challenge for every TA team going.
Yeah. No, very interesting. I think timely with the recruitment operations element of it. I think obviously the way the TA functions has evolved over those years, that area is going to become more and more important and pivotal. And as you say, it's crucial. And I think there's a big topic. We were actually talking in the community the other day around what is that perfect time to invest in that team and double down on it as you go on your growth journey. So yeah, I can see how that is a very, very pivotal function.
100%, yeah. And even if it's in a small way, if you're day one, you're hiring your first TA lead or whoever's going to have that role, prioritizing systems and technology fluency, a builder mindset, and someone who is good at analytics and analytical thinking. All those ingredients will add up to the ability to build a strong experimentation culture and approach to your work And that is the only thing I think that's going to separate winners and losers in the TA space over the next 3 years, especially with the sea change of technology that we're about to see.
Yeah, love it. Jamie, what a place to land. Incredible, unique, fascinating journey. It's been great getting to know you better and
Very much.
your career from obviously co-founder through to leading global talent teams, bringing a ton of experience to the board of Visionaries and a different lens as well, which is really cool. So super excited to have you help shape the future of the community, and welcome officially to the UK board of Visionaries, Jamie.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I am super excited to be here. Really feel very privileged to be part of the community. And thanks for inviting me for the conversation.
Yeah, no worries. It's been great chatting, Jamie.
All right. Thanks so much.